Hello, everyone. Welcome to another new episode of ESL Talk.
We are your hosts. I'm Faye.
And I'm Daniel.
Last week, we learned a lot about student mental health from our guest, Hajar. And this week, we're wrapping up season 3, discussing goal setting and how to plan ahead for success in 2022.
Yeah, if you missed last week's episode or you'd like to catch up on all of our previous episodes, you can do so via our website, which is esltalk.com. That's esl-talk.com.
And you can also get early access to new episodes, extra content, one-to-one monthly teaching webinars, mentoring, and exclusive free merchandise by joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/ESL Talk.
So as the holidays are over and we're now firmly into 2022, a lot of us are starting to get to work on our goals and we're trying to achieve our goals as teachers.
Yes, and we will be digging deep into this topic today, just the two of us to wrap things up for our season. So let's get to it and talk about our goals and how we go about achieving them and how others can reach their goals too.
From the conversations I've had with a lot of teachers so far, we've had the Christmas, we've had the New Year break, and we're just starting to get into it now, even though it's the beginning of February as we record this, but It's never too late. And it's always a good idea to hit the ground running. So Faye, what professional goals have you set for yourself in 2022?
This year, one big thing I really want to get off the ground is my YouTube channel, just as a way to, like, we talk a lot about passive income and stuff like that. And I find that I've relied a lot on Instagram as my marketing tool. But I would love to explore YouTube a little bit more, both to do live lessons, but for content and like ad revenue, but also as another way to, reach more students and a bigger audience out there. That's my biggest goal. And then using that to keep selling my course that I worked so hard on last year. And I would love to have it be like dozens of students every month. So that's my goal for this year.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the course? You've kind of mentioned it, briefly before. What is it exactly about the course for our listeners?
Last year, I really wanted to, I noticed that a lot of my followers and a lot of my students here in Vancouver were people that I've always worked with, more intermediate advanced learners who were completely fluent, but when they would arrive in an English speaking country, they would feel like they were lacking that day-to-day knowledge of the language, expressions and different ways of saying things that were not what they're taught by traditional classroom settings or course books. So I developed a course to help students with their real life English needs.
Yes.
And so this is aimed at students who either live in an English speaking country or plan to, who are at a more advanced level, but feel that need to use English at work and day to day. So it's divided into 4 themes, talking about problems, talking about plans and intentions, things like talking about character and preferences. And it's all very like context based. And I do a lot of expressions, vocabulary and grammar through it as well. Yes. So it's all recorded. It's all there. And, it was a lot of effort because we talked about how we had to learn so many things, becoming teacher entrepreneurs, right? Like video editing, recording and all that. So
using all these different softwares and platforms and etc. It's good to hear this, Faye, because I know a lot of us are thinking the same thing or we're going down similar paths, and to think about ways that we can better engage our learners, give them more value and add more to their experience is always, something that we can do to set the goal. So, is there anything else that you're looking to do, maybe professionally, in terms of developing your skills or your training?
I would love to get back into working with other teachers and teacher training. And we've talked a little bit about our plans, which we're going to discuss for later today. But I've connected with a couple of other teachers as well that were our guests here about doing more workshops and things like that to assist teachers that are transitioning to online teaching or teachers that are just starting out in the business, because that's something I'm really passionate about as well. Yeah. And in terms of professional development, mostly what I want to do this year is just work on my marketing skills. And as a teacher, as a businesswoman now, a business owner, let's say, I feel like that's something I lack in. And we learned a lot with our guests this year about that too, right?
We have for sure.
Yeah. Now, what about for you, Daniel? What are your big goals for the year? Are they similar or do you have other plans?
Well, the plans for world domination might have to wait a little bit, but in terms of the goals I set myself, I was kind of pretty I was pretty ambitious in what I set. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn now. That's kind of where I'm focusing most of my attention in terms of engagement. And I'll talk about that later. But what I've tried to say is that I want to work with 100 new students this year. And that sounds like, wow, how are you going to do that? And my plan is to try to help as many students as possible in what I'm doing. And my main focus now is kind of working with international students, helping them with academic writing, helping them adjust to university life or research or PhD or a master's in the US, in Canada, in the UK. Again, it's been a really good journey so far. And again, it's not something that I've been able to throw all my attention into, but it's going really well. So my goal is to try to work with as many students as possible to help them be successful in their writing. And then I've also, like you, because of how we've been networking and meeting lots of wonderful people, which again, we'll talk about later. I've really started to put myself more into curriculum development now and content design. And that's, again, another stream that we talked about that's going to be really helpful for me in terms of building different, income streams and developing and connecting and networking. So my main goals are to work with as many students as possible, keep developing, refining, improving my offerings, not the service, but I say, like what I offer my students as a whole. And then again, I'm trying to kind of branch out and improve my curriculum, develop those so I can help people. Of course, ESL Talk is a huge part of what we do now. So that's a priority as well. And again, trying to help as many teachers as well. I find myself having more and more conversations with teachers. And it's really wonderful to help them. And again, we've got something we want to talk about a little bit later. So we'll hold on with that. But those are our goals. And again, they might sound quite ambitious. You might be listening thinking, I can't do that. Well, it's definitely possible. We just have to think about an approach and we have to break it down into steps. That's
how you definitely don't know until you try, right? It's exactly. A goal, and you really got nothing to lose. I think it's a great goal that you've set yourself, and like that number to me seems completely possible, knowing what you can do and what you've done so far. I don't think it's that far off.
As we sit here on February 1st, I'm 15% of the way there. So it's a good,
that's amazing.
Per month.
Exactly. That's excellent. And how do you go about planning, setting, and reaching those goals that you, for example, these ones that you've set yourself?
Yeah, I think it's always a good idea to reflect and see where you're at. So over the Christmas break, I had a little bit of quote unquote downtime. And that time was great for me because I can reflect and think, okay, wow, I did all these things last year. How can I improve what I'm doing? How can I refine what I'm doing or make it more valuable for students and maybe more valuable for me if I want to think about it in that sense. So it's not necessarily having a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. This is my plan A. How can I keep improving plan A and reworking plan A and making it as good as it can be? So the approach might have been before, okay, I'm going to work with 20 one-to-one students at a time. Now, that's probably going to leave me burned out. It's going to leave me pretty exhausted. Lots of teaching lots of different things. So instead of teaching 20 students everything, okay, I'm just going to now focus on adult learners or maybe older learners, maybe above teenage years in terms of age. So that way, okay, I'm improving that now. I have my target. Am I going to teach reading, writing, IELTS, speaking, test prep, kids reading? Well, that's a lot of different things I have to do. So maybe not. Maybe I'm going to focus on these 1 or 2 things now. So 2 offerings as opposed to 5. That's, again, is saving me a lot of time. And then again, instead of teaching 20 students for 20 hours a week, I can now go, okay, let's look at some groups. Let's get a couple of students into groups. And again, that's tricky to do, but it's possible. And then again, those 20 hours come down to maybe 15 hours a week. Okay, great. Now I can start working on content, developing content, building curriculum, which I can then use for students. So then planning becomes faster. I have a system in place to support students, give them more in terms of an online platform, in terms of, groups where they can communicate on Facebook and those kinds of things. So I generally would look at what I've done before. And like this year, 100 students. Okay, I worked with about 65 students last year. So it's a big jump, but it's possible because I'm going to be more efficient. I'm going to be more cohesive, and I'm going to have extra things in place. So that's how I've thought about it. And you have to have a plan for that. So I haven't just said an arbitrary 100 students.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be 10 students in January. Okay. And then maybe another 7 or 8 in February. And then maybe we have another group set up. So that way we keep the ball rolling, and something that seems really impossible, because I've come out of the gate, pretty hard, and I've got 15 students so far, which sounds very difficult. But if you have a good plan for that, then it is possible. So push yourself, but don't be too ambitious, but don't be too cautious, and think about how you're going to get there. What are the steps? Because if we break something down into smaller steps, it's much more achievable and it's much more attainable.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's my approach. What about for you, Faye?
Yeah. I mean, what you said, something that I remember we talked a lot about with Elena as well, setting like more specific goals rather than, like just a general, I want to reach this many students in this many months or something like that. Like you said, be very specific and all that. That really helps. But I find that my approach is also very similar to what you mentioned early on about being more reflexive about what I have already achieved. So for me, it's always more like, what did I do this year? What can I do to improve on that? Right. Or so to me as well, it seems a little less daunting that way than to just create a completely new goal. Because last year was a pretty difficult, I'd say not difficult, but it was a big undertaking, because I was basically starting the business, creating a course, growing my following and all that. So I did all that. Now what's the next logical step? Right. So for me, it was more, it's more like, okay,
getting started is really difficult. And then once you're up and running, you're like, okay, now what? So how
what worked, right? What didn't work? Like what did I enjoy about this year, about this process? What are some things I could do without, or that I would like to phase out of my day-to-day life, or what are some things I feel like are not being used to their fullest or explored to their fullest? So that's basically where I came up with the plans that I have now, which is basically shifting more my attention to YouTube a bit more. So let's try that platform now that I've done all that Instagram seems to offer me. And, and the idea, I already have my course. So now I need to use it. I've put in all this effort in it. So I want to focus more on marketing that, and, maybe making some changes so that it's always going to be keeping up with what the students want. So I like that reflexive approach. Like,
I think so.
For me, that works better.
And if anyone listening, might need some help, or they're not sure about their goals, then we can definitely help you with that as well. We'll be happy to.
Yeah, for sure.
So thinking a little bit more widely, a little bit more generally, Faye, as teachers, what are some common goals that we should set ourselves? Maybe just thinking in terms of our day-to-day or a week by week approach. What do you think?
I think that as teachers, we're usually very people oriented, right? So I like to think of it from two perspectives. What can I do? Again, being very reflexive, like what have I done for my students? What have I done for myself? What can I do better for my students and for myself? Let's say next week or next month, or for the next intake that I have, next group of students. So I think it's always important for us to keep both of those in mind.
Yes.
Right. What worked and what didn't for my students' performance, for my students in class. So that's why I always like to get feedback at the end of a course, surveys. If it's face-to-face, you can do something printed anonymously, get that feedback so you can always reflect on what you did, how your students felt, how well you achieved your goals. And then also look at yourself. What worked in my day-to-day life? What made me stressed? What were some things that maybe I'm causing like unnecessary extra work for myself? What are some things I can automate, right?
Yes.
I noticed a lot with my course, for instance, that I had added live lessons weekly, and I was marking a speaking and a writing at the beginning and at the end of the course. And about 80% of the students wouldn't do the assignments. And half of them would come to the live lessons, And then it ended up being more stressful for me than anything, because I kept bugging the students to do the assignments. And, I would come to class on the live lessons. And I understand because of time differences and all that. And I'd be like, sorry for the students who did show up, because maybe we had a smaller class that day, or they had to talk to the same people over and over again. But obviously they were enjoying it. They were having a great time, but I was getting stressed out about it. So I made changes to my course, and now those things are optional. If you really want them, you can pay the extra fee for that, right?
Yeah.
So you just got to, I think, keep ourselves and our students in mind, and from time to time, just check in. Yes. What about you? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you've already covered some really important factors. What I would say on a day-to-day basis is, as a teacher, don't burn yourself out with teaching as many classes as possible. A lot of teachers think, I need to teach as many classes as possible. I need to make X amount of money to pay my rent or pay my bills. And that's a real issue. And again, we shouldn't underestimate that that's, some people are just going to make it through day by day. And it's difficult when you're starting out. So I would always say, because a lot of conversations I have, teachers are telling me that they're working a lot of hours, they don't get a day off, they're doing 6, 7, 8 hours in a row. And it's, that's a really dangerous approach to take, I think. And I think as teachers, we need to set ourselves days or hours or chunks of time that are non-negotiable of, I'm going to take this day off, or I'm going to spend time with my family, or I'm going to go play with my son or daughter for these few hours. And having that time there that's consistent, you can kind of push towards that. So if you have a very busy day, if you think I have 6 classes today throughout the day, well, that's okay, because on Thursday, I'm going to take the morning off. I'm going to do chores in the house. I'm going to do grocery shopping. I'm going to go enjoy a coffee in a coffee shop, something small like that. It's really important. And that's going to help you. And that's going to give you the opportunity to reflect, to think about ways you can do things better, to refine your approach. And as you said, feedback is king. And in a lesson, provided you have a pretty good relationship with that student, just to ask them, how did that work for you? What did you think of the material? Was it too easy? Was it too difficult? How was the article, or how were the keywords? Was it, exactly. What did you think of the activities? And just doing a temperature check there can be a really nice way to help you improve and to better serve that student. Because I've had students in the past where they've gone through materials or they've gone through classes, and maybe it's taken them 2 or 3 classes to say something and speak up. Whereas if I'm giving them that opportunity and I can kind of sense maybe this isn't working, then we can change things. One example last week is, I have a conversation class that I teach with a student, and we're going through articles and we're analyzing the articles, we're discussing them, we're building on them, and we do it in a very visual step-by-step way. And she just said, I'd prefer to just talk like a conversation. I don't really need the slides. Great. That's fine. We can do that. And we can talk more. We can build more. So a really simple tweak like that, it takes me 5 seconds to just type things instead of showing slides. Perfect.
And sometimes we get too excited, or we forget to check with the students, right? Like you said, you were creating all this work for yourself, and the student just wanted something simple.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
One other goal I would set, again, it doesn't have to be arbitrary. It's very tempting sometimes if you have a new student, or you're meeting a student for the first time, and you think, okay, I want the student to sign up for a month or a package, or 3 months or whatever. It can be very tempting to try to overpromise, and then you're constantly trying to catch yourself up, and where it gets to a stage that it's not worth it. And again, with that, I found, by using your first lesson to create a plan, to really listen to the student. You don't have to talk that much, just to listen to them and listen to their goals and what they need. You can then create a plan for them. And what I find works really well is, for me, I've got to a stage now where I have different curricula that I've put together, and I can actually just pick and mix and choose different elements so that I can build that plan. And then that way the student feels like, oh, they're listening, they understand what I need. We've set some goals, we can start working on those. So then that's a much easier pitch than meeting a student for 30 minutes and saying, okay, let's do a package. What do you think about this? Or let's book for the next 20 classes, the next 10 weeks. Again, you need to be, I think, a little bit more patient with that, because a lot of times that they will come to you and they'll approach you. If you're offering them something they really want, then they'll come and take that. Of course, you can ask the question, but again, don't feel like you're pushing a little bit, because sometimes students may push back. So
that's true. Focusing on the goals and what they can attain, rather than how many hours you need for that, right? Because that's something that they'll realize how that's going to be.
So looking ahead to 2022, what are some new opportunities that ESL teachers can start to explore, more than just conventional teaching?
Yeah, there does seem to be more and more out there in terms of online platforms. And I do think sometimes it's hard to stay on top of it all. But I know that you've used a lot of like italki and platforms like that. I think are things that are really helpful for teachers who might be starting out They've
Yes.
only ever gotten local students, and now they want to branch out and they want to maybe try to get students more internationally. So there are lots of opportunities out there for teachers to do that, I find. And other than for work, I would say definitely try to look into teaching, into ways of professionally developing yourself, your own teaching and your networking. There's so many different workshops and things you can do online now, and communities you can join. And if you just follow us on Instagram or follow us individually as well, and some of those guests we've had in the past, in the episodes we've talked about community and teacher development and stuff like that, you'll see there's just a lot of different things that you can do to connect with other teachers, to be part of that community, and just take advantage of the fact that we all had to move online, and just kind of just dive in. And I feel like now more than ever, this is just the way of the future, that we're not going back to the way things were anytime soon. We're just moving forward. So I definitely encourage people, if you haven't already, to try to search for more of these opportunities online, and maybe just get your feet wet a little bit in the online world of teaching. I find that could open up a lot of opportunities. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. Again, I have had conversations and I've spoken to other teachers where they've said, I'm teaching on this Chinese platform and our contracts are not being renewed, or I'm only getting 5 lessons a week when I used to get 20 lessons a week. And the message that I always try to share with teachers, and it's not easy, and it might sound easy, and it's not, it is difficult, is don't just rely on one thing. Don't have all your eggs in one basket, to use the phrase. Because some teachers were just working in classrooms or language centers face to face, and those language centers closed because of COVID. And they thought, okay, well, what do I do now? Or I'll try this online platform. Okay, I'm making a lot of money now because everyone's at home. Great. And then that starts to drop down. Okay, so now what do I do? So instead of hopping from one thing to the next, it's a good idea to think, okay, I'm really good at Spanish. Why don't I do some translation work? Why don't I do some proofreading work? Why don't I offer my services for maybe legal copywriting or something like that? There's lots of different ways you can utilize your skills. So you could think of something like that. Also, in terms of, your language skills, it doesn't necessarily just have to be teaching students. You could be working with people in your area where you are, maybe working with other teachers, networking, joining, together your skills, pooling skills together to help each other. That's a really nice thing to do. And again, we talked about it before, and I'll just kind of lay it out and I'll mention some things we can do. So maybe 4 or 5 potential new things you can try. So like we said, online platforms could be a good way to start. If you're confident that you can go out on your own and do it, there's lots of ways to do that. That's another option that you can have. So maybe you sign up for 1 or 2 platforms, and then on top of that, you're also actively going out finding your own students through organic means. Again, I said translation or proofreading or content writing or copywriting, something like that on places like Fiverr. I know a lot of teachers who do that. Materials, curriculum, if you're really good with graphic design, or you're really creative, creating resources and materials, teachers cannot get enough of that. So if you have some skills in that area, or you've created things in the past, jazz it up, monetize it, make something from it. Another one is language assessment, not just for English, but for other languages too. You can do language assessment. A lot of people need to check their language proficiency. So there's things like the IELTS, obviously, in English, and there's equivalencies in French, German, Spanish. So there's other places you can find those if you search them out. Again, audio content, podcasting, takes a while. It's not necessarily profitable right away, but can definitely help get your message out, and people can know who you are. Because if you're setting up shop in a desert, this is the analogy I've heard a lot. You're setting up a shop in a desert, you might get a few cars driving by. They might stop and take a look. But if you go to your audience, you know who your audience is, and you share your message with them directly, then they're much more likely to engage and want to know more about what you have to offer them. So these are all ways not only to increase your hopefully increase your income, but also to increase your presence and show. And then obviously, like you mentioned before, Faye, things like YouTube, again, takes time. But a lot of people, and I'm sure you'll agree with me here, it only takes one video And it's usually the video you don't expect, or it only takes one, I wouldn't say controversial, but one thing that really resonates with viewers, and that can be the difference. So again, it's tricky, it takes time, but there are lots of options, there's lots of opportunities, and it's just about having an open mind and having the right mindset and working hard. And a lot of times now I'm finding my students maybe not coming to me, I'm not going to them, they're now coming to me because they see, you're posting a lot of good content, or this person worked with you, or this person told me to come and talk to you, or I saw this article that you wrote, or I listened to this podcast and I want to find out more. So these are all ways to do that. And it's kind of like a snowball. Once it starts to build up, then it gets moving and you can pick up more momentum. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In a nutshell, those are some opportunities. And again, feel free to reach out and we can discuss it more in the future. So Faye, is it important to continue training and networking with others to reach your goals? I mean, we've kind of touched on this, but how is networking helping you? Maybe we can go down that route first.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that, networking is it's how I got where I am, like co-hosting the podcast with you, also doing developing courses and posting stuff online. I've created a few things in collaboration with other teachers from all over the world. And I think that's only made me better, like a better teacher. And also it's so important for our mental health. We talked a lot about mental health this season, which I really enjoyed, and it also made me think a lot about what I'm actually doing, because it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to experience it and to take action. And just the other day, I was talking to one of our previous guests, actually, who I met online, and we were both talking about how the challenges that there are with being like a self-employed teacher online and marketing yourself on Instagram, and some of the rewards, but also some of the things we have to deal with, and some of the things that we can get tired of sometimes. And it's just really great to have somebody or some people or a group of people that you can bounce ideas off of, and also have that sense of sympathy with each other, and just that like that the teacher's lounge that we lack nowadays, the face-to-face teacher's lounge, right? So I find that for me, that's really been really valuable. Having that has really helped me mentally a lot.
Sure.
Yeah. What about for you? Has having contact with all these different teachers this year helped you professionally? And
I find myself sometimes getting a little bit annoyed with myself because teachers ask questions, or teachers have, issues or problems, and they might post it in one of the Facebook groups I'm in, or they might post it on LinkedIn, or they might share an article. And I just feel like, okay, I want to try to share some knowledge and some experience. It doesn't mean they need to listen, but it's just, to try to share my experience. So networking has been amazing for me, last year, and obviously the start of this year, because it allows me to have good conversations with people. And it's got to a stage where similar people in a similar, boat as me, who are teaching online, they say, oh, wow, Daniel, you're really good at X. Could we maybe work together on this? Or Daniel, I have a student who I can't help, but could you help them? And vice versa. So we're setting up that reciprocal, it's not a kind of we're looking for something out of it. It's just, well, let me share the knowledge, let me share the experience, because by sharing your experiences, you're helping others. And then by helping others, they will, hopefully either help another teacher, or they'll help their students. And through networking, I've managed to, like I said, now work with certain people on building curriculum and putting things together. I've indirectly taken other courses, and I found other ways to learn more skills and be a better teacher through this. And then I found out as well, small questions, asking, how do you do this? Or you did this really well. How would I do that? Or do you know how to find X? And again, teachers are more than happy to help you. So when you're building your network, maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's Facebook, maybe it's LinkedIn, depending on your student that you want to target. Make sure you also connect with similar like-minded individuals as well, other teachers, other people like that, because it helps. Again, it helps with your presence. If we don't know who you are, how can we reach out to you? How can we tell students about you? How can we, feel like we have an expert in this field, etc. So when it comes to like, you and me both, Faye, we've been on lots of other podcasts. We've had other podcasters on our podcast. I've made videos, I've made curriculum, I've taken courses. I'm working with, other people who have really huge online presences. I'm being interviewed for things now. And that just helps to increase the presence that we have. And again, it's not just about getting more students, it's about being recognized and being the go-to person for X. So, or being the go-to person for Y. So once you have that identity, then you can help students, you can help other teachers, and you can hopefully, build a good network where it's people helping people, students helping students, teachers helping students, and then building skills. And it doesn't have to cost anything. This is the beauty of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that you're going to be, you do end up in this new online world, I guess, that we have now of teaching. You do end up doing things that may seem like you're just working for free, but you're not. You're investing in your future, and you're investing in your career and in your business, right? Which is you.
It's winter right now. We're planting the seedlings outside,
exactly.
And then by spring or summer they'll start to bloom. Or
just
maybe
sow
it's a
the
tree
seeds.
that takes a year or 2 years. Yeah,
lots of analogies today.
Yes.
Now, what about accountability? So we have all these goals. We're talking about all these different things that our listeners can do and that we're going to do. So how important is it for us to be accountable for these goals that we're setting? What do you think?
Extremely, extremely, extremely accountable. You need to be accountable. If it wasn't for you, Faye, this podcast wouldn't be in the state it's in. And that's a good state, by the way.
And vice versa, right? We wouldn't be able to be doing this on our own, either one of us.
Sometimes it's that, you get a text or you get a WhatsApp message and you're like, oh, do I have to do this today? And it could be from your student. That could be from me in your case, Faye.
From our co-host now.
But I'm saying this kind of accountability can actually be good because it gives you that motivation of, you know what, this person is doing it, so I need to do it as well. And I found that if anyone listening, if you're starting out on your journey, if you want an accountability partner, that is a really wonderful way to help you reach your goals.
That's true.
I took a course back in December and actually had an accountability partner. And it was just nice just to touch base a couple of times a week. How are you finding this? How's this going? Any tips for this? How have you found targeting your messages and your content, things like that is really good. Or some teachers on italki would say, I'm not getting many bookings. Does anyone know why? So sure, let me take a look at your profile, or maybe we can change this, we can tweak this. So having that accountability, it doesn't only give you motivation, it gives you support, and it kind of refocuses your energy, because something might not be working, and by yourself you might think, oh, this is not going to work, just forget it. But if you have an accountability partner thinking, no, this is good. It's not, you might think in your mind, it's a really bad idea, but it might just need a slight tweak or a slight change to make it a great idea. So I think accountability is huge. And it's something I would advocate and something I'm doing myself to help me reach my goals. But for you, Faye, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I would also make a suggestion here for those that maybe can't find an accountability partner, is just put your goals out there somewhere. Just to post them on your Instagram, them, we have this tool nowadays, post them on your LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. So having that can be you having that accountability yourself, but also you're putting it out in the world, which is basically what we're doing on this episode. Like we've both set our goals and made them public now, so we're accountable for it, and all of you listening to us can check in and make sure we're on track. But just finding a way, like try not to make any excuses for that too, right? Like how can I, if I don't have anyone who can push me to do it, I have to create that accountability myself, right? And you can definitely do that online. You can even post it on our Instagram page under this episode's post. We'll create a section for that. So it's just that's definitely important. We've established that. So find a way to become accountable for your goals, right?
Yep.
And what do you think now in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges that we are facing as teachers in 2022?
I think a lot of it, the challenge comes down to fear, which is totally understandable, and maybe a mindset shift. So let me explain that. So when I say fear, okay, I had this job in a school or in a university or in a college where I was making, I don't know, let's say I was making $60,000 a year. And that was fine. I was getting by. Great. But now I'm at home, my school closed, or there's no work, and I have to try to make that money. Oh no, I better just throw myself into this, get as many students as I can. Oh, there's a lot of teachers doing the same thing. Maybe I'll just, $20 is too much. Maybe I'll just charge 15. Okay, maybe I'll do 10. And then after a month, you might have made $1,000, but you're burned out, you're tired, you're exhausted, you're doing lots of prep, you're doing lots of planning, your quality of life just disappears. Yeah. And it's totally understandable and natural for that to happen. It makes a lot of sense. So the challenges are making sure that you have a system or that you have a plan that you can execute and that you can work within, so that you are able to obviously survive, because that's really important, and shifting your mindset a little bit as well. So instead of kind of thinking, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm I'm a non-native speaker, so maybe students they don't want to book a class with me, or they don't want to take lessons with me. Well, why? So again, it's that imposter syndrome that we've talked about a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Try to understand that even though you're not a native speaker, it doesn't mean that you're not, worthy, or you're not, qualified, because absolutely, we have conversations all the time, Faye, and we're on both sides of the spectrum. And there's some things that you know way more than me about. And there's certain grammar rules and certain mechanics of English that I couldn't explain to you, but you can explain them perfectly. So that is amazing if some students need that. And there's times for me where, obviously I'm very well qualified, and we've taken a lot of the same courses in the past, but there's some situations where you would be a much better person to explain something than I would. So again, think about what what you bring to the table and what your skills and qualities are. Don't think about what you can't do. Think about what you can do. So that would be the first thing that I would say. Secondly, the biggest challenge is knowing where to start. Where do I begin? So that starts with, who is my student? If it's everyone, then you're going to get burnt out and exhausted pretty quickly. If it's adults, okay, where do we go from there? Do we go for adults working in tourism, like Hajar's client group that we talked about last week? Are we going to focus on students who speak English as a second language? Are we going to focus on adults who have children and we're going to help them? So think about what your audience is, and then what's your message, what's your offer to them, and how are we going to find them? So create plans. Like we mentioned, social media takes a long time. Reaching out to students takes a long time. But hopefully January, February, whilst you're building that up and putting the effort in and putting the hard work in, you start to build up and start to be more well-known and start to connect and network. And as you do that, you're opening more doors, you're opening more windows, you're getting more visibility. And the more visible you are, the more people will see you. So that's how it works. And then, of course, is the whole problem of perfectionism. This is hard to believe. I hate talking in public, even though I'm doing a podcast. I hate taking videos, and, I think, oh, my hair doesn't look good. Why do I look so tired? I'm not ready. I don't want to make videos. And that's been a real barrier. And it's a big issue for a lot of teachers. And I can totally empathize with you. Changing that mindset. Don't aim for perfection, because do you know what? No one's perfect. Doesn't matter how good a teacher you are, how long you've been teaching. No one is perfect. But for you, again, to connect to your audience, to relate to your audience, by putting short videos out and just connecting with them, you're going to get way more engagement, way more, of a response, and hopefully your message will resonate and will connect with your audience way better. But I want to ask you, Faye, because you make a lot of videos. What was it like for you when you started doing that?
It was, I just had this, I've always taken this approach to things. It's like, I won't know it until I try it.
Exactly.
And I've always believed I'm more likely to regret something I don't do than things that I do, you know? So for me, I've realized I was trying to plan like 100 videos and make scripts for all of them and then start filming and posting, until one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start. I'm just going to shoot a video and put it out there. And that made me realize it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Once I had the video up and started getting feedback, and I'm like, let's try another one. That one, maybe I don't like the lighting in that one, so I'll try it this way. And maybe, the background didn't work so well, or, oh yeah, I look a bit tired, so maybe let's try a different angle or something like that. But my approach has always been to not second guess, or I've never delete a video unless there's like a huge editing issue in it, or something like a typo that I need to fix because we're teachers. But, just like I leave it up there. And if you look back at my first video, let's say that I posted on Instagram, it is very different from what I do nowadays. I'm definitely not as natural as I am now. I look more like deer in the headlights type thing. And, all that. The lighting is weird. What's that angle? But it's also good to look back and be like, you know what? This is my evolution. Exactly. It shows how far I've come. And if you, it's like you said about mindset, if you shift that mindset to, it's all part of my learning process. It's all part of my history as a teacher, And
you're not the same teacher that you were when you did your first video, but now you've done it hundreds of times. It's easy, it's natural. You can probably now just see something and think, oh, let me do a video about that.
Yeah, exactly. And now I've started to learn ways that I can be smarter about my use of my time as well, because it is true that you are creating free content on Instagram. You're not being paid for it. And sometimes it is hard to stay motivated. I even feel that way, like to record all these videos and all that. And it's like, okay, why am I doing this? Right. It's so much of my time. And just being smart about things like that too. Yeah. Oh, I'm just at the grocery store. This is something interesting for the students to see. So I'm just going to shoot a video real quick. Or the other day I made a sequence of stories on talking about the snow here in Vancouver, and people loved it. And I'm like, I'm just going to edit those down into a video and post that on my timeline.
Exactly.
So just trying to find ways, like thinking as a teacher, like we always do. But, I've always done that. And you probably do that too. When you're out, you're like, oh, this would be an interesting lesson. Oh, this would be a good video to show my students. You do the same, but you have your phone with you. So you just shoot a video.
I just go to my notes tab and I'm typing things in. Let's write about this. Let's talk about this. Let's share this. Exactly.
So I think that, what you said about fear, I think it's a really big thing. And I think for 2022, for a lot of us, there's still a fear of the unknown, because I think we all thought that by now we would have a more steady, stable life post-pandemic. And we're clearly not. We're like shifting into a more endemic state of things, but we're definitely not, things are not going to go back to the way they were. And and now we know that they can change at any minute. So I think a lot of things we have to reassess, a lot of things that we took for granted, and a lot of things that were certain in our lives are not anymore. So I think this is a huge challenge for us. It's just, what can I count on? And I think that realization of I can count on myself.
Exactly. Yes, that's what I was going to say.
What can I do? Like you said, like even if you're a non-native speaker of English as a teacher, what can I do well? What have I studied? What have I learned? This is what I do. This is what I teach. This is who I am. And, just play to your strengths. And none of us are perfect. We don't all know everything. We have like native speakers making grammar mistakes all the time, mistyping words and spelling. And it's like, that's fine. And that's what I like to show my students too. Being a native speaker doesn't mean you're a perfect speaker of English, right?
No, it doesn't at all.
That shouldn't be the goal. And that shouldn't be your goal as a teacher either. So, I'm not a native speaker. And, I did have moments where I doubted, I questioned who was going to hire me in Canada. What am I doing as a Brazilian moving to Canada to teach English as a second language? Nobody's going to hire me. The country's full of native speakers, but that was completely not the case. I was assessed and evaluated according to my skills as a teacher, my experience, my qualifications. And it was just really a really interesting realization when I noticed that my boss had more faith in me than I did,
Exactly. And the beautiful thing was, even though we've both come from very different backgrounds as a native and a non-native speaker, we've actually gone on pretty similar journeys in a lot of ways, which is great, because we
ended up basically in the same place, like we're here, so it is interesting to think that
it is. It's great.
And now shifting more to our students, what do you think are some of the challenges they're facing, and how can we help them in 2022?
I think a lot of students are still in that stage of Zoom or online burnout where they're just used to, having lessons online. So what we need to think about there is what would I want if I was a student? So trying to have that empathy of what would I want if I was a student? Do I want document after document of reading? No. Do I want, lots and lots of visuals? No. So again, understand your student, listen to their needs, and try to give them something that's going to meet their needs. So for example, with a lot of students now, I don't just give them the one-to-one class because they need more than that. So one-to-one class, online course, which I can kind of mix and match with videos, content, assignments, etc. Some homework tasks, which are based on the material to link it along, readings, things like that. So listen to your students, create a plan, negotiate a plan with them, and make sure that they feel like they're part of that journey. It's not your class, it's their class, and you're just facilitating and helping them. So I think that's the biggest challenge that our students might face, is kind of knowing what they want and trying to be aware of that and meet their needs. And then also for students now, they've never had more options for places to learn English or a language, or teachers, or, teachers at the low end of the price range, teachers at the high end of the price range. So again, like you said, Faye, don't focus on I have A, B, C, D. That's great. To have those qualifications is great, or to have that experience is great, but what makes you you? So for me, knowing where a student's from. So if I have a student from Brazil, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Sao Paulo. Oh, really? Wonderful. Yeah, I have a colleague from Sao Paulo, blah, blah, blah. And I know this and I've learned this. So you build that instant connection, you build that trust, and you build it up to a stage where that student thinks, wow, this teacher really gets me. I want to invest in them, because they invest in you as a person. They don't invest in the program necessarily. That's just one element, or the class necessarily. It's one element, but they invest in you to help them reach their goals. So I'd say those are the main things to be aware of, that we should think about with our students. What about for you, Faye?
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think more particularly, again, thinking about what our fears are, like after all this pandemic and all this, I feel like our students this year are realizing that they can't put their goals on hold anymore. I've seen a lot of students who, like 2020, 2021, everybody was still kind of holding their breath and okay, when will I be able to go study in Canada? When can I get back into my preparation for my university abroad? But I think we're all realizing, and students have realized now, that they can't keep these things on hold. They just have to adapt. And like you said, that has this aspect of like, okay, now I have all these choices, all this new type of learning, all this access to all these things that I don't really know, or that are so new for me. Right. And even like methods of learning and teaching and doing online courses, doing lessons over Zoom, this might all be very new for our students.
Yes.
So I'm so thankful every time I get students that never met me, but they sign up for my courses just because they've seen me on Instagram, or,
this is exactly,
and they trust me with that.
Yes.
And
because you're sending out that message, you're going to your student, they're resonating, they're investing in you to a stage where they can just get started, instead of you don't know me, I don't know you, let's try and build that over 30 minutes or 45 minutes. It's not quite the case. So yeah, it's really good advice.
And it's really admirable. Like it's commendable for them. I always tell them, like, I'm so honored that you have trusted me. You've trusted my course. I'm happy that you're here. I'm here to support you in any way I can. So it's good for us to keep that in mind too with our students, that, this is challenging for them just as it is for us. And again, how can I help them with these challenges, and what tools are there that I can use to make them feel less alone, make them feel less unsupported in this journey.
Do you ask your students why they chose you, or why they decided to buy your course or to sign up for your classes? Do you ask them why?
That's a good question. I never have asked that specifically. Okay. I do get feedback at the end of courses and things like that, but I've had students tell me that they had seen me talk about my courses.
Okay.
And they, on the first time, they're like, okay, fine. And then the second time, maybe that's a good idea. And then the third time they hear me talk about it, they're like, you know what is this course that she keeps talking about? So that's been a great lesson for me too, is that repetition, online of like, what do I have to offer you? How can I help you as a student?
I
And
found
just
by
telling
asking,
them.
I've
Yeah.
asked, when I first meet students, I ask them, I say, what was it that made you, book a class? Or why did you want to book a class with me? And then just by finding that out, it's really nice because it helps me better serve my students and know what they need, because I know this is my target student.
That's
These
a
are the
very good
problems
point.
they have. And I can use that again to reflect and to build my content and my message to them. So
Yeah, that's
it's
good. I've never done that explicitly. I should. I've always
mhm,
done more in observation. For instance, the newest group I've just started with my course,
mhm.
um, almost all of them live in Canada or US.
That's
And then
amazing.
one of them is moving here next year.
So that's your proof
So
of concept right there.
exactly. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this is exactly the people I had in mind when I developed this course. And so it's
It
working,
takes time.
right?
It's been a year and a half now, right?
Yeah, a year. Yeah, a year, just over a
Now
year.
you have
Mm-hmm.
that proof of concept, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
that's great.
Great.
Yeah, that's very true.
All
Mm-hmm.
right. So let's now talk about the goals for ESL Talk in 2022.
Right. It's been actually just over a year since we started the podcast, and it's been such an incredible journey.
It really has. We just wanted to thank all the listeners and audience, and we're continuing to grow every episode. We actually, the last check, we average around 5,000 downloads a month, which is amazing. That's something I never thought we'd achieve. And, with your help and support, we're able to explore new topics. We've been able to interview some amazing guests and help more and more ESL teachers as well.
Yes, and we do want to be able to connect, network, and help more of you in 2022. So we actually have lined up some really big guests for season 4, which will kick off soon with a huge announcement.
Yes, we have something very big that you're going to be hearing about when we start again for season 4. And again, your input and your ideas will be needed. So we hope to hear from you, and we can try to put all these things that we talked about in practice. And this could be a great opportunity for you guys to demonstrate your talents, your skills, your passions, and share and build that community that we're talking about. So please do stay tuned. We will be sending out information. So stay tuned for season 4 information. It should be coming out shortly, but we are just going to be taking a little bit of time to reflect and to kind of plan ahead.
Remember that while we're on break, you can still get in touch with us on Instagram at ESL Talk Podcast. You can send us an email to esltalkpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website and access all of our previous episodes from seasons 1, 2, and 3 for free. Just head to esltalk.com. Remember, it's esl-talk.com. And finally, you can find us individually on Instagram. You can find me at Learning with Faye. Faye is Fey.
Or at I'm Daniel Teacher. Thank you for your support, guys, because I can see a lot more of you following me now. So thank you for that. It's wonderful. So we've reached another milestone. Season 3, it's in the pocket. It's done. It's been a great season. We've had a lot of really great guests, and we'll be continuing in the same passion, same vein, and we'll be getting a lot more from you in future episodes. So we're really happy for your support, and we'll see you soon for season 4. It's dropping very soon.